So I think we are facing all the challenges that we're seeing now in the power market, and what we're working on is basically to turn this challenge into an opportunity for the consumers, so they basically can help provision their buildings, their assets, as a balancing mean to the energy system, and by doing that they can earn money on provisioning that flexibility. They can contribute by substituting and reducing the use of gas-fired power plants, and by that they are supporting the green transition, and they can also use the compensation to yield their energy efficiency investments. So if you go back further to the next slide, Rasmus. So what we basically are doing and what we're motivating is to democratize the role of these central gas-fired power plants that is basically used today to help balance the system. And by doing that, we will save a lot of CO2 emissions, but we will also channel that payment that we today are paying for the reserve power plants. We will channel that compensation back to the consumers for basically offering the same service, but in a much greener and efficient way. If you go further, Rasmus. So what we have developed is a platform that is basically designed to meet two challenges in this type of flexibility market. One of the challenges was it was too costly to onboard a lot of assets and administrate that. And the other thing was that there was a lack of trust between the ones who are delivering this type of flexibility and the ones who are buying it. So we worked and have developed a solution where we do not need to install any assets, new assets, but we're exploiting the trend of instrumenting instrumenting and automating ventilation systems, heat pumps, electrical vehicles, with the means of building management systems. So we can integrate to a building management system and thereby get access to all the underlying assets beneath that building management system. That means that we can reduce the onboarding cost per asset with a factor between 50 and 100 for large fleet owners of assets. For each of these assets, we are making a profile so that we basically can optimize the portfolio of these assets. I'll get back to that. And design the balances of these assets to the different needs of the ancillary services market. That means balancing and offsetting the wind power, but also to mitigate for some of the congestions that we will see when we are getting a lot of heat pumps and electrical vehicles. And to not install sub-meters for all of these assets, we have developed a virtual meter that is basically based on blockchain. Rasmus will get back to that later on. Next slide, Rasmus, please. So for each asset, we are basically making a profile. It's called a flex profile. And that helps the fleet owner govern their assets. So they basically decides and register how much load each asset represents. That means if it's a heat pump and if it's 10 kilowatt. Then, I mean, we know it's 10 kilowatt, and then the consumer basically decides how much of these 10 kilowatt we can activate. Is it 5? Is it 8? Is it 2? So they basically define the rules for how we can activate each asset, for how long we can activate it, how fast we can turn it up and down, and basically how often. And when we know all those conditions for thousands of assets, we can make an optimized portfolio that can be used to bid into the market, and thereby the consumer has the security that we do not compromise the rules that they were set, but we're basically optimizing the portfolio across all the assets. And we can do that for EVs, for cooling, compressors, and ventilation system, heat pumps. So we can do this for the various asset types and basically instrument it across large fleets. If you go further, Rasmus. So with these types of asset profiles, we basically can unlock a huge potentials across cities, buildings, factories, electrical vehicles, and water infrastructures. So the interesting part here is that buildings makes up for a very large part of our total energy consumption. And you can see within the HVAC system, heat pumps, there's a large potential. About 40% of the consumption that represented by these asset types can be used to help the system operate in a much more balanced and efficient way. And about across, cities and buildings, about 33% of the total energy is power energy is flexible. So you can imagine if we can offset and help cities and large corporations provision their flexibility to the market, we can substitute quite a large portion of our reserve power plants. Next slide, Rasmus. And this plays very well into the Energy Performance Directive that are coming from the European Commission. This states that all buildings above 200 kilowatts are to be equipped with exactly these types of building automation and control systems that we then can leverage and instrument into the market. So we can help accelerate this initiatives that are coming from the European Commission, and this is, for any owner of large buildings, this would be relevant. Next slide, Rasmus. So this is basically how we differentiate from some of the other conventional flexibility solutions. So on the right side, you see that if we are to use conventional control box systems, it will be very expensive if we are to set up, let's say, or instrument 10 assets in a warehouse. Then we would need 10 times control box, submeters, and communication modules. But if we are utilizing, as illustrated on the left side, that we utilizes the infrastructure that many of these buildings are already using to controlling their assets, then we can do this in a much leaner, safer, and faster way. And that is basically the essence of how we can get economies of scale by utilizing a solution like this. Next slide, Rasmus. So an example from the city of Copenhagen, where they basically can provision 10 megawatts across a ventilation system, then they can gain about 1 million euros per year. And they can help save the society about 7 tons of CO2. And these numbers are important because that will help improve the energy efficiency investments and make those business cases much better in order to accelerate and get the backup from the decision makers to make this faster and a higher priority. So we are working with the city of Copenhagen, and they are very keen to help share the experiences with other large consumers like them. So if this is relevant for the German market, they're probably willing to help illustrate what they're doing there. Next slide, Rasmus. So we have done this for and are doing it for the city of Copenhagen, and there's 2 other examples where we are doing this for a supermarket. If you go to the next slide. And water treatment plants. And these are 3 examples where there's a large scalability opportunity, where we are utilizing some similar types of assets groups, which there are many of. So the water treatment plant in Copenhagen has a lot of these rotors that can be utilized, that you're seeing these aeration processes. So in general, in water infrastructure, there's a lot of inertia that we can utilize the flexibility from. And the same with the supermarkets, there are a lot of freezers and coolers that we can help instrument and turn up and down when the load flexibility is needed. So this was an introduction to the solution. A last point I want to make out is that we have tried to estimate and make a much leaner tool. If you are interested in looking into your flexibility potential, we can have worked on assessing this in a much faster way. Where we basically are utilizing the experience from, that could be other cities, supermarkets, and water treatment plants and other types of industries where we have make these assessments. So that means that we can get started and give you a flavor of your potential in a fast and efficient way. I think, Sarah, we will take the questions afterwards. Is that correct?
Yeah,
yes,
that is correct.
Exactly. We're going to do the demo first, and then Thomas,
Okay.
and then questions.
Okay. Over to you, Rasmus.
All right. Hang on 1 second. So, actually, I think you're not seeing my screen anymore, correct? Hang on. Where are...
We do see a screen.
You do see my screen?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I do actually. So before we go to the demo, I did want to share one more slide. So does that work? Does it work this way?
Yeah, we can see it, although
okay.
again, it's not in presenter mode.
Right. Is that fine for this one?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay. So, well, maybe it is. I think I'm doing dual screen here, so it seems a bit. There's a bit of a. I don't know. Okay, but so before we go straight to the demo and before I show you the beast and show you the actual platform, I just wanted to put it into context and sort of articulate a bit what we're gonna see. And what you see here is basically another view of the ecosystem that Trygve showed a bit earlier. And in the middle, we have the platform. I will get back to some of these components in a bit. On the left-hand side over here is your flex provider. So that is your cities, your supermarket chains, and so forth, together with their BMS, their control system, coming from an OEM and original equipment manufacturer like Schneider Electric or Niagara or whoever else builds those BMS systems. We then, of course, integrate to that system as Trygve articulated. On the right-hand side over here, we then have the aggregator, meaning the energy retailer or the balance responsible party, as well as the TSO. In Denmark, we have only one, and that's the same for most countries in Europe. I guess for Germany, you have 4, but nevertheless, we need to communicate with the TSO and the aggregator, who would then take that flexibility from the flex provider and trade it into the market and sell the flexibility. And in order to sort of facilitate and orchestrate that, we have the flex platform in the middle. And I'm not going to sort of deep dive every box here, but I think, just so you understand it, basically it's a platform built on some IoT services, which is on the top left. A set of trained models, AI models, to sort of forecast, and then a blockchain service to keep track of agreements and the delivered and reserved and forecasted flexibility. Then we have a set of market integration APIs so that we can communicate to both parties on the right side and on the left side. And in the bottom of this platform view in the middle, we have all these sort of core functionalities like user management and localization and that good stuff. And so what you're going to see in a second is a bit of what we have up here in the left top side, the IoT services. We have something around flex agreements between the flex provider and the aggregator, so they need to agree on various things and the commercial side of what they want to provide of flexibility and what they earn. We have something called flex profiles. Basically, as a flex provider, as a supermarket chain, or as any other company providing demand-side flexibility, you want to define a profile for your assets, meaning how long time can we take control of the asset, for which periods do you don't want us to take control, or the flex platform to sort of take control of the asset. And this is quite important. You could imagine a gym or a supermarket store in peak hours. Potentially they don't want us to mess with their ventilation systems. It could be an entire day on Black Friday. They don't want anything to happen, so they can define sort of business rules that apply from the way they operate their business into how we then can orchestrate and take control of the assets. And then on the right side, we do have some AI models to basically forecast from the assets how much flexibility is actually available for the aggregator to bid into the market. So we need to look at the specific asset and historical data from that asset, as well as ongoing data while we are communicating with it, basically, to learn and to sort of in an intelligent way come up with a forecast to say, for a given hour in the next day, from 10 to 11, there is this much flexibility in this given asset that we can bid into the market. And then if we then receive an activation signal, we need to take control of that asset, and we want the asset to deliver X amount of kilowatts. But of course, you cannot really tell a ventilation system to consume 10. You're consuming 10 kilowatts, and now we want you to only to consume 5. So we need a sort of a conversion method to convert kilowatts into how you control a given asset, being most likely in Pascal. So we need to say to ventilation system that the current fan speed is running at a certain Pascal effect, and we needed to go to something else that we believe is then translated to the kilowatts we want. So it's a quite important but also difficult exercise that we need to take here. And then finally, we have a virtual meter that we need to sort of calculate how much flexibility was then delivered and what was the baseline, so that we can also look at the settlement and the compensation, the euros that you're actually then earned, and what you actually delivered. So that's sort of the flex profile, the flex platform as it looks in a PowerPoint. But I guess it's a bit more interesting to look at it in real life. And so what I'm going to show you is both the view from the left side, meaning the flex provider. So most likely, the users you could imagine, the user roles you could imagine logging into the Flex platform as a Flex provider would be your facility managers or energy managers, and then it would probably also be a person with a bit more technical ability and interest to sort of set up the assets and monitor the health of those and configure the gateways so that the integration is running and that's sort of stuff. But when you come into the Flex platform as a Flex provider, the first thing you will see is your dashboard. It will show you sort of a historical view, or not a historical view, but also a historical view of how much have you earned during a time period that you can define, of course. But for this year, how much have I actually earned providing demand side flexibility into the market, and that's of course something that's sort of some of the really interesting things you want to know, of course. Then on the bottom left, you have a map basically we now have set up a demo profile for a supermarket chain in Germany. So you would be able to sort of hover over the map and see for this particular location, we have a bunch of assets on this specific supermarket. And if you wanted to, you could navigate. You could press here and you could navigate into that sort of portfolio, and have a detailed look. And I will navigate there in a second, just through another way, so you can see how the assets are set up. Then the bottom right side here is this pie chart. Basically shows you that, you know, currently you have 400 assets split across multiple locations, and 395 of those are available to be reserved or activated to be traded, and currently 5 of them are reserved. So your retailer or your aggregator has already reserved 5 of those for the hour in question. If any of those were active, actually delivering demand side flexibility, there would also be a green part here. But given that this is a demo environment, and we don't have real assets in the other end for this environment, of course we don't really have any active part of this chart. And then on the top right, we also do a calculation to give you an overview of then your CO2 reduction from delivering this demand side flexibility. So that's sort of your starting point. And there was a timeout, so you were too slow. So going into the setup, I'm not going to show you every bit of detail, but I will invite you all to reach out if you want a more detailed view. We could look at this for hours, of course. But I just want to show you a bit of the setup, and so I'm just going to choose. We have properties. Under a property, we then have a building. You could imagine a university campus would have more buildings on the same property, so you would probably have 10 buildings. For this example, we just have one building on the property, and on the property we then have a bunch of different assets signed up. We have some cooling, some EV charging, some air handling units, various things on the property, various assets here. And in here you can, of course, define the asset type. You can give it you provide the BMS, so the external ID. You can give it a name. You can add additional metadata attributes if you want to. More importantly, you have a gateway connection you can set up, and you have some set points you can adjust, so you can actually define how we are supposed to take control of the asset. And we can also see there is a sub-meter, so there is a power reader, there's a power sensor on this particular asset that is measuring the kilowatts during delivery times. And then we can see it's hooked up to a flex profile. And the flex profile is where you define the business rules, as I mentioned before. And you probably would group a lot of assets on one profile. So you would probably say, for all my ventilations in this building, define one profile and connect them to that. But you could split it however you want to, what makes sense for your operations. So here you see we have created 3 flex profiles for now, and I'm just going to pick any one of them. So this is a flex profile for ventilation systems, and here what you see is that you have this opportunity to define for how long time would you allow the flex platform to take control of that specific asset. If we have taken control of the asset, then for how long a break do you want? So if we turn down ventilation for 1 hour, then probably you would like us not to do it for the next hour. So I would probably not have 0 here. I would probably say, whatever. It could be whatever. But let's just say if you have just taken control for an hour, then please don't touch this this set of assets for the next 2 hours to make sure my comfort and for the inhabitants using that particular part of whatever building is where I want it to be. So the supermarket is not suddenly 25 degrees.
Weg, ne?
Ich glaube, wir haben gerade ein Verbindungsproblem. Okay. Sollen wir kurz was sagen? Ja. Hallo, leider ist unser Vortragender Rasmus gerade aus dem WebEx rausgeflogen. Der wählt sich jetzt wieder ein und dann geht es ganz normal weiter.
Jetzt kann der klassische Fernsehsatz kommen, es ist halt alles live, ne? Und
Ja.
außerdem auch noch remote zu einem Überfluss.
Das macht den Charme aus.
Ja.
Ne?
Gerne nutzen Sie auch die Zeit, or maybe we should switch to English.
Oh, yes,
I think that would
absolutely.
kind of make sense.
Yeah.
You can always ask questions in the WebEx chat. So we already received some. Feel free to just add on top of that whatever comes to mind, questions maybe rising from all these detailed views into the platform and what it works like.
Thomas, unglücklich.
Yeah,
Die Alternative, wäre, Thomas, dass the alternative would be, Thomas, that you just do your part first, and then once Rasmus comes back, we switch back to the demo. How would you prefer that? Shall we do that?
Yeah, I'm fine. We can do that. If someone can show the slides.
Yeah. Okay.
Think
We have someone on it. Give us a moment. I'm sure we can make that happen.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is we were ahead of time a little bit, so it's almost like we planned it that way.
Well,
Give us a
not
little
quite.
break. I mean, it's not that bad, right? Have a little break to breathe.
A toilet break.
Right.
Bio
Whoever
break.
needs to, that's the moment.
Yeah, if not, I could start without a slide if you want
Perfect.
to.
Hi, guys.
Okay, I think we have Rasmus back on.
Yeah, I was just making a cliffhanger on purpose.
Yeah, very good. We're all very excited.
Dramatic. Yes, we all want to know how it continues. Please do.
Yes, sorry for that. I don't know what happened.
No worries. Can you switch on your camera because we can't see you yet?
Yes, if we dare to do so, and hope that the network can run my camera as well. But let's try.
Yeah, let's be brave. Okay, you're back on.
All right.
I think we can
All right.
see. You're not yet. Yeah. Okay. Now we can see your screen and everything.
Okay,
Perfect.
so I came from the profile, and I'm just gonna speed up a little bit here. So the last thing, if I wanted to show you on the Flex profile, is probably that you have the opportunity for this profile to say that for given hours during a day, please don't take control. You could, check, say the whole Monday, I don't want anything to happen on my assets, and so forth. So you can define a lot of business operation rules on the profile, and you can add exceptions, as I said, Black Friday probably, or something else, gym day for the school, or it could be anything. So that's the profile. Then the last thing I probably want to show here is that you can create a flex agreement, a flexibility, which is basically an agreement between the flex provider providing the demand side flexibility and then the aggregator actually selling that flexibility in the market, and then that's where the money comes from. But so you basically create an agreement between you and your retailer or your aggregator, and you define, for now this is Danish data, but you define for which market balancing area you want this agreement to be true. Depending on that, of course, if I choose for DK1, there's only one ancillary service for now. If I choose DK2, there would be another option as well. So there is dependencies between areas, market areas, and ancillary services products. Then you define your minimum reservation and activation price. So basically, I don't want to be activated if I'm not compensated a minimum price, so that you're sure you're not activated and the price was unreasonable. And then basically, you're good to go. You have an agreement, and on the agreement you can then attach your assets so that the these assets are now part of an agreement. And if that agreement, if I then just switch to the other view, so now I'm not the flex provider owning the buildings and the assets anymore. Now I'm actually the aggregator or the balance responsible party trading that flexibility. Then I would receive new flex agreements here. I would have a look at it. Maybe I would. And I would just review that. I would see if I'm okay with the given prices, and then I would acknowledge that. If that is then acknowledged, like you can see I have all these flex agreements available for me to then trade. Now, you could imagine an aggregator having agreements with more flex providers than just one. So there could be flex agreements from one supermarket chain and city of Copenhagen and several different flex providers could then be sort of grouped into a portfolio that can be traded, and it's on the portfolio level that we then construct these forecasts and bids that can be placed into the market. And what really is the essence of this view is that the idea is not that the trading company and the people actually sitting there and trading energy would log into the Flex platform. We have, as the slide showed you, we have API integrations so that they can actually do that from their own system. So they don't have to log in here and do it. But nevertheless, what they would do would then say, okay, I have an available portfolio. I have a forecast on my portfolio, and I can see that for this portfolio name, for this market area, I bid that into the market, and if I then won that bid, basically it works like an auction the day before. So for the following day, you bid that into the market, and let's then say that you won that bid, and now you want to reserve and activate the capacity available, the demand side flexibility available. Then basically, you can reserve and you can also, I guess, in the given hour activate it. And whenever you do so, basically that would then be reflected on the dashboard for the flex provider over here. When the hour comes. So when that hour checks in, then of course this pie chart would change. So there's a link between what the aggregator is doing and what the flex provider is doing. I think that was what I wanted to show for now, unless there's anything people want to see, or any questions, or anything Trygve or Thomas wants to show.
We have captured all of the questions in our chat. We're going to ask them at the end of your presentation. So Thomas comes next, and then we can get to the questions.
Okay, so
Rasmus, can you do? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hang on. Let me go to that presenter mode then, like this.
Yeah, exactly that one. Yeah, this Flex platform has been invented in Denmark, right? Because Denmark is one of and with Copenhagen and is one of the leading countries and cities when it comes to sustainability, definitely in Europe, probably worldwide. And the question is Germany ready for such a platform? We've seen that in Denmark, it's growing, it's taking adoption in the market. The city of Copenhagen is taking it as a standard for their facilities. Large supermarkets in Denmark are already piloting and working on using the Flex platform. There's also a ton of other interested enterprises in Denmark who look at this. And the good question is Germany ready for that? We have not that share of renewables yet in Germany, which probably created the demand in Denmark. So are we ready? I think that's an exam question, the big question for us. And I would probably have been more skeptical last year about the Flex platform. But let me share some thoughts why I think Germany is now this year really ready for Flex platform. And the first thing is you all have seen that we are starting to get more ambitious and more determining about achieving our targets in terms of sustainability. We have the 80% renewable electricity target for 2030, and more importantly, even so, I would think we have the 50% target on renewable heat. And renewable heat means a big push in heat pumps. And indeed, also we have now for 2024 the 65% rule, which says that any new housing heating needs to have a share of 65% renewable share. And that's just the start of it. That's the so-called Osterpaket, right? What we've seen, and there's a summer packet, and there's more legislation coming. So it's now really serious. And also another thing which we also see is we have a growing cost of inflexibility in the energy system. If you just take, for example, congestion and curtailment services together, the figures in 2020 alone amount to 1.4 billion euros. That's a huge number, and Flex can address a significant part of it. And then the third thing is Annette, I think, mentioned that already in the beginning also, is that we have a huge take-up in electric vehicles. And with electric vehicles comes significant flex capacity in form of batteries, which can be used to reduce peak load on the electricity network. And give flexibility back into the network. And then the fourth thing, which is never going away, which is still the case, is that the EU, as part of the Green Deal, is heavily promoting for market mechanisms for flexibility. We know that Germany in the past has been a little bit more reluctant to deploy such market mechanisms than some of the other countries, but we truly believe that this is going away. So our conclusion is Germany is ready for Flex now in 2022. And on the next slide, I'll just would like to show you a little bit what we do to grow Flex in Germany. And it's basically two simple things. One is IBM has contacts to large customers in any industries, and we have selected a couple of target industries where we see the biggest potential for such a platform, and we've started to engage with clients across the board to aggregate demand flexibility and make that available through the Flex platform for it to be used in the grid. So that is something we have started to do this year, and will continue to do so to bring smaller assets in large numbers, make them available for bringing benefits to the electricity system. And obviously, and that's on the right hand side, we also need partners. So while IBM, we see our role in aggregating demand flexibility using the platform Trygve and Rasmus has shown you, but we need partners from the industry, from the utilities industry, to really market that flex capacity. And market means through ancillary services. That's a vehicle which is available through current regulation. But we will also, over the coming years, look beyond, obviously, ancillary services into other ways of making making flexibility available to the energy system. So that is what we do, and then just last small slides before we go into question to just show you that is this is how we engage with companies around the Flex platform. We have a pretty industrialized approach to actually do that, to quickly come to a solid assessment of the flexibility available and the monetary benefits from that flex potential, and through the experience we have with various assets, with various customers, it's easy for us to actually do that quickly and reliably. And then a typical approach is that we do a pilot, and from the pilot then we scale. And with that as a call to actions, we are looking for partners in Germany to really grow that platform to the benefit of everybody, and last not least, obviously, to the benefit also of our sustainability targets in Germany. That's it. Just a short view on how we look at this platform in Germany, and then back to Sarah and the questions.
And actually, this time, Sebastian will take over because we decided to confuse everybody a little bit more. We will change roles during the day. So now today, I am the question guy. But first of all, I want to thank you guys. What a cool project. I really think it kind of drove home the point we were trying to make in the beginning together with Annette, right? This whole idea of bringing different actors with different capabilities together on a smart platform and therefore make things work and kind of enable this whole big transition we have ahead of us. So really cool project. Also, we did receive a lot of questions, which we would like to share with you guys. And I think the first one is one that you did touch upon, but maybe you can elaborate a little. So it's really about the potential conflict between the core functionality of a certain asset, right? Something it provides to the clients, for example, a charging infrastructure. You have a CPO who wants his or her clients to be able to charge at any given time. So that's the one thing. And on the other side, the idea of providing flex to the grid, right? There could be a conflict when the flex is provided in a moment where actually you would want to charge cars. So how do you deal with that, and what's kind of your process here?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a common question we get, and the way we basically come around that is very much to the Tetris blocks I showed. So here you can basically define the hours and the time frames where you will provision, or where you can provision the assets for delivering flexibility. So that means that for certain hours a day, if you have a large fleet of electrical vehicles, for instance, then it would be possible to make sure that based on data where you know that these cars are typically being available for charging, let's say for these 4 hours. And within these 4 hours, we know that we can basically or typically deduct or reduce the load of these charging stations by, let's say, 20% or 30% or 50%. And that makes up for how we can deliver flexibility from fleets of electrical vehicles. So it is a combination of the flex profile, so we know how much we can reduce the loads of our charging stations, and also the availability of the charging stations, and thereby we can come to some quite accurate number that can be delivered.
And is there like an agreement that gives a frame for that, or is the flex provider completely free at any time to say, okay, I don't want to provide flex right now because there's like 5 cars waiting to be charged? Is there like a frame, or are they really free?
It is a frame, so typically you would need to bid into the market the day before. That means that we would have to, with the flex provider, to assume the amount of flexibility that we know, or as we anticipate there will be the next day. So as Rasmus also said, there will be some days where we know there's very little flexibility because our cars are busy, or other days where we know that there are more cars on the parking lot or in the garage, and there we of course will then have a higher potential. We also operate with some contingency margins. That means that we can make sure that let's say that we estimate 10-20% lower than what we anticipate to make sure that we have some kind of buffer, and that's the dialogues that we have with the charging providers.
If I may add a point here, is also the sort of mitigation by scale. We're talking about a lot of assets potentially here. So if one asset either is being used or for some reason there is an outage that it doesn't work, then because we have so many assets in the profile providing flexibility, you probably wouldn't have that big an impact as if you had two big assets providing a lot of kilowatts.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that should answer the question. Thanks, guys. Also, we got a more general question that's probably kind of easy to answer, and it's really about you're talking about smaller assets, and someone was wondering what's the ballpark here? What is a small asset? What are the typical assets you would combine with the Flex platform?
So if we look inside buildings, the typical assets within a building, a ventilation system could be 2 or 3 kilowatt up to let's say 50 kilowatt. So these are the types of smaller asset that we have built capabilities to optimize and pool. So this is where our scalability really comes into efficiency. That said, the platform can be applied to large assets as well. But I think our core strength is that we can get value out of the really small assets.
And I think that's exactly where you really add a value, where you bring something novel to the market that we haven't seen before, right? Big assets are in the reserve and response markets all the time. They've been there for years. They make money. Great. But what we really need to move this forward, bring the energy transition onto the next step, is how do we use the small scale assets? And that's exactly the question you answered.
Correct, and that's where we see the large potential with fleet owners of let's say supermarkets, where there's a lot of smaller refrigerations and cooling assets that can be put into the market. So we basically, as you said, Sarah, we can unlock a vast amount of megawatts to be balanced because we can instrument thousands of assets.
All right. So we got one question left, actually, and it's definitely from an expert because there are a lot of abbreviations. So the idea here really is to, or basically the question is, what kind of additional kinds of response of ancillary services do you want to incorporate into the platform? For example, FCR, FRR, what are the plans here to kind of put that into the picture?
So today we are operating with the manual reserve, so the MFRR and the AFRR, and also one of the FCR products, the FCRN. We do not see. The typical assets that we operate is not for the very fast frequency service reserve market. But we can come down to reaction times about 2, 5, 10 seconds reaction time. So that means that we can basically play it into to some of the very fast markets as well. So we have now operating on the ancillary services market. The congestion service market, as Thomas talked into, is not that generalized or open yet. We are working with the Danish DSOs, so the Danish distribution network operators, to basically apply the same, our Tetris blocks to those markets, and also learning about the coming price points and the requirements to that market as we go along.
All right. Thanks for that detailed answer. And I think we have covered the most questions for the time, or did something reach you?
Yeah, I've seen on one of our other channels, there was a question around, we've talked a lot about the flex providers. What is the aggregator side of this? So how does the aggregator come into play? What is their role? How do they benefit from being a part of this? And have you actually spoken to aggregators outside of Denmark?
So another good question. So as Thomas said, we are building this ecosystem, and we have spent quite some detailed analysis and assessment in Denmark to understand the requirements from the different aggregators. So the aggregators are of course important also in the German market, because they are basically the access both to the large consumers because they are trading and helping them with procurement of electricity and portfolios. They are also managing some of their PPAs, so their large power purchase agreements for solar parks and wind parks. And that is basically where this solution can be a very good complement for their relationships to the large consumers. And it's also there the opportunities to basically combine and aggregate portfolios of flexibility that these aggregators can then trade on the behalf of the consumers to the ancillary services market as of now, but also to the common more formalized congestion services and markets and containment markets in the future. So we do not try to be an energy company, but we basically have designed the solution to accommodate the needs for the aggregators or the large retail companies to basically complement the products and services that they're offering to the market today.
All right.
And Sarah, to add, we are talking to aggregators in Germany, so that is happening. And obviously there is a lot of questions like regarding to pre-qualification for auxiliary services, for example. How is that different from Denmark, which we're responding to? Because in Denmark, the platform is accredited for auxiliary services. In Germany, we are not yet, right? But we are in the process of engaging around this pre-qualification on the basis of what we have achieved in Denmark.